When I landed the job at this office, I was ecstatic. Fresh out of college, eager to start my career, and completely naive to the complex social dynamics I was about to encounter. The office was buzzing, a hive of activity with an undercurrent of something I couldn't quite put my finger on at the time. It wasn't long before I was introduced to our private messaging tool, reminiscent of those old MSN days, designed to foster a sense of community and collaboration among colleagues. Little did I know, it would also serve as the stage for my first encounter with Mr. Charm. On my very first day, amidst the flurry of welcome messages and emoji-laden greetings, one message stood out. It was from him, Mr. Charm, though I knew him then only as Alex. He was warm, inviting, and seemed genuinely interested in how I was settling in. "Hey there, welcome aboard, how's your first day going? Need help with anything?" the message read. It was comforting, a beacon of friendliness in a sea of new faces and names. Over the next few days, Alex's messages became a regular part of my routine. He was always there to offer help, ask about my day, or suggest we grab a coffee sometime. I appreciated the gesture, but caught up in the whirlwind of my new role, I never took him up on the offer. It seemed harmless, friendly office banter, or so I thought. Then came the day that would forever change how I viewed Alex, and indeed many of my colleagues. A woman, let's call her Jane Doe for the sake of anonymity, approached me. Her appearance alone spoke volumes. She was visibly distraught, her eyes rimmed with red as if she'd been crying for hours. Jane was from a different department, one I had little interaction with, and yet here she was, seeking me out with a sense of urgency that immediately set off alarm bells. "I need to talk to you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's about Alex." What followed was a tale so bizarre, so fraught with drama, that if I hadn't been sitting there, listening to Jane Doe spill her heart out, I would have found it hard to believe. She and Alex had been engaged, a whirlwind romance that ended in tragedy. She showed me a tattoo, his name etched across her back in large, flowing script, a permanent reminder of what she thought was everlasting love. But the real shock came when she revealed her pregnancy, a beacon of hope that was extinguished when she discovered Alex's infidelity and made the heart-wrenching decision to end the pregnancy. I was floored. The charming, seemingly caring man who had been so friendly to me was at the center of this storm of betrayal and sorrow. I didn't know what to believe, torn between the image of Alex I had formed and the reality Jane Doe presented to me. That conversation marked the end of my innocence in the office. It was the moment I realized that beneath the professional smiles and corporate camaraderie, there lay a web of personal dramas and secrets that I was now, unwillingly, a part of. The revelation from Jane Doe hung over me like a dark cloud as I navigated my way through the office in the days that followed. Every interaction with Alex was now colored by the knowledge of what he had done, each of his charming smiles tinged with a sinister hue I couldn't shake off. Yet, to the outside world, I maintained a facade of ignorance, unsure of how to reconcile the friendly colleague with the man Jane had described. It wasn't long before the situation escalated. Another woman, who we'll call Emily, approached me one day. The look in her eyes was one of solidarity, as if she too had been burdened with the same heavy secret. "You've heard about Alex, haven't you?" she whispered, glancing around to make sure we weren't overheard. It seemed Jane's warning had set off a chain reaction, uncovering a pattern of behavior that many were aware of but few discussed openly. Emily shared her own experience, a brief but intense affair with Alex that ended abruptly when she discovered she wasn't the only one. But it was what she said next that truly shocked me. "He's done this before, many times." According to her, Alex had a reputation for pursuing new female employees, charming them with his attentiveness and apparent kindness, only to leave a trail of broken hearts and complicated personal entanglements in his wake. I felt a mix of anger, disgust, and a deep sense of pity for those involved. How could someone be so reckless, so devoid of concern for the consequences of his actions? And yet, there he was, moving through the office as if he hadn't a care in the world, his latest messages to me now sitting unread, a stark reminder of the facade he presented. The complexity of my feelings was mirrored in the office dynamics. Whispers followed Alex as he passed, yet no one dared confront him openly. It was as if his charm had cast a spell over the office, a veneer of amiability that masked the turmoil beneath. In the midst of this, I found myself grappling with a dilemma. Should I confront Alex, armed with the stories of those he had wronged? Or should I remain silent, protecting myself from becoming another character in his twisted narrative? The decision weighed heavily on me, a testament to the moral ambiguity that seemed to permeate the office walls. And then, just when I thought the situation couldn't get any more complicated, I was promoted. With my new role came access to information and office gossip I hadn't been privy to before. It was then that I learned about Sarah, another colleague of ours who was not just involved with Alex, but was also the mother of his child. Their relationship, however, was anything but conventional. With my recent promotion, I found myself in an awkward position within the office hierarchy, privy to secrets and whispers that once eluded me. Among these revelations was the intricate web woven by Alex, a man whose charm seemed to eclipse the reality of his actions. But it was the discovery of his relationship with Sarah, a colleague I had known to be fiercely private about her personal life, that truly caught me off guard. Sarah, unlike the other women who had warned me about Alex, seemed to be in a somewhat stable arrangement with him. They shared a child, a little girl with bright eyes and Sarah's unmistakable smile, whom I had seen in office photos but never knew to be Alex's daughter. The office rumor mill, now more accessible to me, buzzed with conflicting stories about their relationship. Still, it was Sarah herself who finally shed light on their peculiar situation over an impromptu lunch one day. "We have an understanding," she explained, her voice steady but her eyes betraying a hint of resignation. "He's free to explore, but I stay committed. It's complicated." Her admission struck me as profoundly unfair, a one-sided freedom that seemed to serve only Alex's interests. Yet, Sarah appeared to have made peace with this arrangement, or at least, had come to terms with it enough to continue. The knowledge of their open relationship, if it could even be called that, left me with a bitter taste. It underscored the stories I had heard from Jane, Emily, and others, painting a picture of a man who manipulated the norms of relationships to suit his whims, with little regard for the feelings of those involved. My thoughts were interrupted by a chance encounter with Alex himself, who seemed oblivious to the storm of opinions swirling around him. "Hey, I've noticed you've been avoiding me," he said one day, cornering me by the coffee machine with that same disarming smile. "Everything okay?" I was torn. Part of me wanted to confront him, to lay bare the hurt and chaos he had caused. Yet, another part, perhaps the more pragmatic side, cautioned against it. What would it achieve, after all, besides entangling me further in his web of drama? As I navigated these treacherous waters, more stories emerged, not just of flings and broken hearts, but of other children, children like Sarah's daughter, who were growing up with the shadow of Alex's actions hanging over their families. It was revealed that he had fathered not one, but multiple children with women from the office, each story more heartbreaking than the last. This man, who could charm his way through any situation, had left a trail of emotional destruction in his wake. The office, a place I had once viewed as a straightforward environment of professional pursuit, was now a complex network of personal relationships, hidden pains, and unspoken truths. I found myself at a crossroads, both professionally and personally. The revelations about Alex had not only changed how I saw him, but had also altered my perception of the workplace and the people within it. The lines between right and wrong, professional and personal, had blurred, leaving me to ponder my next steps in this unexpected drama. In the weeks that followed my unsettling conversation with Sarah and the uncomfortable encounter with Alex, I found myself increasingly consumed by the need to understand the full extent of the situation I had inadvertently become a part of. It was as if opening Pandora's box. With each layer I peeled back, the more complex and disturbing the narrative became. Armed with a mixture of curiosity and a growing sense of responsibility to the others affected, I began to quietly gather information, Conversations with colleagues, once mundane and focused on work, now often veered into the personal, as I sought to piece together the mosaic of Alex's exploits. One afternoon, a former employee, whom I'll call Lisa, agreed to meet with me. Over coffee, she shared her own story, a narrative eerily similar to those I had already heard. She, too, had fallen under Alex's spell, resulting in a pregnancy that she chose to raise on her own after realizing that Alex's commitments were, at best, fleeting. "He has a way of making you feel like you're the only one," Lisa said, her voice a mix of bitterness and resignation. "Until you're not." As Lisa spoke, I couldn't help but marvel at the dichotomy of Alex's persona. The charming colleague, always ready with a smile and a helping hand, and the man behind the facade, whose actions had caused so much pain and upheaval. It dawned on me that the stories I had collected were not just isolated incidents, but parts of a disturbing pattern of behavior. The revelation that Alex had fathered multiple children with different women in the office was a shock to the system. Each story added weight to the growing burden of knowledge I carried, painting a picture of a man who seemed to revel in the chaos of his own making. Amidst this personal investigation, I began to see the office through a new lens. The dynamics that I had once perceived as purely professional were now overshadowed by the intricate web of personal connections and the silent struggles of those caught in Alex's orbit. The realization that his actions had not only affected the women involved, but also their children and the broader office community was a sobering thought. The more I learned, the more I felt compelled to act. Yet the question of what action to take plagued me. Confronting Alex seemed an obvious choice, but to what end? And what of the others, those who, like Sarah, had found themselves in complex relationships with him, bound by children and a tangled web of emotions? As these questions swirled in my mind, I couldn't shake the feeling of disillusionment. The office, once a place of professional aspiration, had become a backdrop for a saga of manipulation and hurt. The realization that I, too, had been a target of Alex's charm, albeit briefly and without the lasting consequences faced by others, was a bitter pill to swallow. In the end, it was a chance encounter with another colleague, a young woman who had recently joined the office and whom Alex had already begun to pursue, that spurred me into action. Seeing the pattern about to repeat itself, I knew I couldn't stay silent. The culmination of my journey into the heart of office dynamics and personal drama reached its peak one crisp autumn morning. The office was abuzz with the usual pre-work chatter, but for me, the atmosphere was charged with a sense of purpose. Armed with the stories and truths I had gathered, and the realization of the cycle repeating with the new colleague, I knew it was time to break the silence. My first step was to approach Sarah. Over the months, I had come to view her not just as a colleague, but as a person of incredible strength and resilience. I shared my concerns about Alex's ongoing behavior, especially his recent attention towards the new team member. Sarah listened quietly, her expression a mix of sadness and resignation. "I know," she finally said. "It's a cycle, isn't it? But what can we do?" Our conversation didn't end with definitive answers, but it sowed the seeds of solidarity and, perhaps, a hope for change. Emboldened, I decided to confront Alex directly. It wasn't an easy choice. The thought of facing him, of calling out his actions, filled me with a mixture of dread and righteous anger. Yet, when the moment came, it was surprisingly anticlimactic. I met him in one of the small, glass-walled meeting rooms, the autumn sun casting long shadows across the table. "Alex," I began, my voice steadier than I felt, "you can't keep doing this. Your actions, your relationships, they're hurting people, more than you realize or care to admit." His reaction was one of feigned ignorance at first, then annoyance, and finally a cold, dismissive laughter. "It's just life, isn't it? People come and go. We enjoy the time we have." His words, so carelessly spoken, were a stark reminder of the chasm between his perception and the reality of the pain he caused. The confrontation didn't bring the sense of justice I had hoped for. Alex remained unchanged, ensconced in his own justifications and charm. but it marked a turning point for me, a moment of personal reckoning. I realized that while I couldn't change Alex or undo the hurt he had caused, I could be a voice of support and a beacon of awareness within the office. In the weeks and months that followed, I focused on building connections, offering a listening ear, and advocating for a more inclusive and aware office culture. The task was daunting, and change was slow, but small ripples began to form. Conversations started to open up, and slowly, the culture began to shift towards one of greater empathy and understanding. Looking back on that chapter of my life, I see it as a period of immense growth and learning. The experience taught me about the complexities of human relationships, the deep-seated need for connection, and the impact of our actions on those around us. It underscored the importance of speaking out against injustice and supporting one another through the challenges of life. As for Alex, his influence waned over time. Whether through the collective awareness of his actions or the natural ebb and flow of office dynamics, he became less of a central figure. The stories and warnings about him circulated less as cautionary tales and more as reminders of a past the office had outgrown. In the end, the story of my time in that office is one of transformation, both personal and communal. It's a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the power of collective action. And while it may not have ended with a dramatic resolution, it left a lasting impact on how I view the world and my place within it.